Well, good afternoon, everybody. My name is David Dubchuk. I'm the producer with Conjunction Media, and I'm live streaming the Iowa Files here, presented by the West Des Moines Historical Society. So, hello to those of you watching on Facebook and YouTube. Gail from the West Des Moines Historical Society will be out here in just one moment. But we at Conjunction Media, we're supporting the Iowa Files this year by being able to help provide the live streaming and all of our expertise there. But she's also given me an opportunity to tell you a little bit about another service that we offer, which is creativity coaching and consulting. So if you own a business or you work for a business where maybe you've got some perplexing problems and you want some novel and out-of-the-box solutions, I can help lead your crew in exercises to help find novel and out-of-the-box solutions to those issues. 70% of CEOs will say that creativity and innovation skills are the most important asset that they have in their workforce, and that they struggle to find that. Also, 50% of customers will pay more for a superior good or service. So, if I do seminars and workshops, and I can come lead your crew in solving a problem, or I can teach your crew how to come up with more creative solutions on their own. And my website is creativedave.net. I've got information on the back table if you want to find me after the production. And I would look forward to talking to you. And now I'd like to introduce Dale from the West Des Moines Historical Society, who will introduce the program to you. Thank you.
Thank you, David. He didn't mention he's an award-winning filmmaker, videographer. He created a series of 6 educational videos for us in January that won Award of Excellence with the Iowa Motion Picture Association. So David is the bomb. Yeah, he's great.
Hi, I'm Gail Brubaker. I'm the Executive Director of the West Des Moines Historical Society, and thank you for the first of the next series of the Iowa Files. It's been a while, hasn't it? So it's nice
to see you all here live and virtually. Just a little bit about us. We are the Jordan House, which I'm sure everybody knows about, the Bennett School Museum, and we do education, programming, and outreach. The Iowa Files is in partnership with the West Des Moines Library, and we appreciate their help ever so much. It's members and donors like you that help us put on free public programming here at the library and all over town and at the Jordan House and the Bennett School. We also want to thank, again, the West Des Moines Public Library and their director, Daryl Eshtay, the Friends Foundation of the West Des Moines Library, EMC Insurance Foundation, the Iowa Arts Council, Bravo Greater Des Moines, and Conjunction Media. That's how we're able to do the first time ever live streaming of these programs. So, nerve-wracking, but awesome. So we pulled in our A1 presenter for this first program, Rod Stanley. He's going to start blushing here when I talk about how amazing he is. He's more than just a local historian. He conducts research, interviews eyewitnesses to historical events or the children of eyewitnesses, as we're getting kind of farther away from a lot of those events. True to his profession, he's retired now, but this gentleman is a passionate teacher of history and informing the public about all things that are amazing, especially here in Iowa. Rod first presented his program about Bonnie and Clyde and the shootout in Dexter a couple years ago. So now we're going to find out the rest of the story, what happened in those 10 months between. Little intrigue, little romance, little gore. So with no further ado, we are so proud to have our very first 2021-22 Iowa Files with Mr. Stanley. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't know if I can live up to all this, what you said, but anyway, I'm Rod Stanley. I am a retired school teacher. I taught for 35 years. My last 17, I was in Panorama. I still live in Panora. I grew up in Dexter, where the shootout took place, actually not in the town of Dexter, at the Dexfield Park. Since it has been 2 years, I was telling Gail, I don't know how much you guys know about Bonnie and Clyde. And I don't know how much you know about the Dexfield Park thing, and I don't know how many of you were here. And it's 2 years ago. You probably wouldn't remember what I said back then anyway. But anyway, the Dexfield Park shootout was 3 miles north at an old amusement park. in Dexter. In fact, it was the largest amusement park in the state of Iowa. It was built in 1916, lasted from 1916 up to like 1932, with a little bit of closure in between because of the Depression, but it closed permanently. Bonnie and Clyde in the shootout, they were camped out at a campground at that old amusement park. People back in those days liked to camp out as much as people like to camp out today. The only thing different was they didn't have the campers and things. They had sleeping bags and tents and so on, but there was a campground that was there, and Bonnie and Clyde somehow knew about that campground, and they had been involved in a shootout in Platte City, and they ended up at north of Dexter at this Dexfield Park. Spent 5 days there, got caught. I mean, there was a guy that came through, saw their camp, went to the local cop, posse went out on a Monday morning, shot the hell out of them. Posse had one person wounded that day, just one. Could have been a lot worse. But all the members of the gang, Bonnie, Clyde, W.D. Jones, Buck and Blanche, all of them except Blanche were wounded, were shot up that day by that posse. Buck and Blanche got caught. The other three escaped. They stole a car from a farmer by the name of Valley Feller. That's where I'm going to start today. And really, you know, I left out a whole lot of stuff, but that was in the last program. Okay? So this is basically where I'm going to start with the program today. I just have to tell you before I say anything else, I don't want anybody sitting out here thinking that I'm glorifying these outlaws. I always have to say this because I've had programs afterwards, people come up and say, Rod, why are you glorifying these people? Why are you glorifying 2 outlaws that killed 13 people? 9 lawmen they killed. I'm not. Their story is an historical story. It's part of Dexter's history. I tell you, you won't believe how many people come to Dexter, Iowa, to my museum, not mine, but the board's museum, and want to know about Bonnie and Clyde. If it wasn't for Bonnie and Clyde, nobody would come to Dexter, Iowa. I'll guarantee you that. Although we had a president live there, we had a president, Truman came there in 1948. In fact, it was just the anniversary of that this weekend where he gave his first Give 'em Hell Harry speech back in 1948, and it jump-started his campaign, and he won the re-election when he wasn't supposed to. But anyway, just let me say to everybody, I don't glorify them, but they do have a story. You can't hide history, although being a history teacher now, it's shame. Some of the stuff that's going on now kind of it bothers me, and I don't know where people politically stand. I really don't give a damn who, where, what, but I just don't. I mean, you can't hide history. You can't hide it. It's got to be out there, and people got to see it. And Bonnie and Clyde's history, it wasn't good. I mean, they were lawbreakers, they were troublemakers. But anyway, this story is going to take you from the time that they leave Dexfield Park. They leave Dexfield Park, get in that 1929 Plymouth, and drive down that lane, and they're on their way out. They escaped with their lives that day. Like I said, they were luckier than hell. They were lucky. They all got shot up badly that day. They were wounded. Buck and Blanche got caught. Buck and Blanche got taken into Dexter. Buck and Blanche got treated by the 2 doctors in Dexter, Dr. Osborne and Dr. Chapler, who had their clinic uptown. They started practicing in 1933. They retired in 1982. They delivered me in 1950. So I'm 71 years old, and Dr. Osborne delivered me back in 1950. But they'd worked on Buck and Blanche. Buck was taken to King's Daughter Hospital. I don't have a picture of that. I have a picture of that up here that maybe afterwards you can come up and see. You ain't going to be able to see it back there. But they had to take him up there because he had a bullet in his back. And they couldn't operate on him in Dexter, so they took him to Perry, to this hospital. And they operated on him, and they found that it had nicked one of his lungs and lodged in his rib cage. And they took the bullet out, and he died 5 days later. But he had a severe head wound from the Platte City shootout where, if anybody was here, he got shot in the forehead and it blew 4 inches of his skull off. And they were treating that wound out at Dexfield Park with peroxide. Okay, they were pouring peroxide directly on it. 2 inches lower, Buck would have been dead, but he wasn't. And he was interviewed, and he said, yeah, it hurts. Yeah, I can control the pain with aspirin. Yeah, I'm still smoking. I'm still eating a meal. Yeah, it's uncomfortable. Yeah, you got 4 inches of your skull gone, boy, man. But anyways, but they took him to this hospital, and 5 days later, he died up there. His family came up from Texas, picked up the body, took him back to Dallas, and buried him in Dallas. His wife, Blanche, was captured as well. She was brought into Dexter. Most of the pictures you see of Blanche back in those days, she had a big patch on her left eye. And that was when they were leaving Platte City. The police shot the glass out of the window, and a big chunk of it landed in her eye. And Bonnie and Clyde were trying to get that glass out, but they couldn't get the big chunk out. And they were taking little shards and things out, but the big piece was in there. Dr. Osborne and Chapler couldn't get it out either, I don't believe. I don't read anything about that. But they took her to Perry as well, and they treated her at the hospital. Eventually, she ended up in Adel, at the jail in Adel. They had no women's facility, so they took her to Des Moines. And they jailed her in Des Moines until the sheriff of Platte County, Missouri, came up and picked her up to take her back to Missouri. And they charged her, here's the charge, attempting to kill the sheriff of Platte County. That was the charge against her. Probably that was a bogus charge. I don't even know if she defended herself. I never read anywhere where a lawyer even defended her. And she was found guilty, and she was sentenced to 11 years in prison in Missouri. She served, I think, about 5 of it. She got out on good behavior. She lost the sight in her left eye, though, from that chunk of glass. But after she got out of prison, she led the life of straight and narrow. Became a beautician. Remarried. And died in 1988. She wrote a book before she died. My Ride or My Run with Bonnie and Clyde or something like that was the name of it. We got it in the museum. We sell it, and people buy it for 25 bucks a copy. We don't make any money on it. We sell it at cost, but people like to read that. I've read parts of it. Blanche is unapologetic. She said, I'd do it again. I love Buck Barrow. I did whatever he told me to do. I don't know. I mean, that's just the way she was. She said we were young and stupid. We made stupid mistakes. But she said I'd do it all over again. But anyway, so Buck and Blanche got caught. The other 3 were on the run, and they were wounded. And according to W.D. Jones, here's my friend W.D. Jones. W.D. Jones was 17 years old, teenager. He had been with Bonnie and Clyde for about, he lasted about 8 months. Lasted about 8 months. And according to him, and if you want to know about his story, you can go online and you can find it. I got a hard copy of it up here. I ran off. You can go up and you can find, he gave an interview to Playboy magazine in 1968. Because the movie Bonnie and Clyde came out in 1967. And so Playboy wanted to interview him and wanted to know, how's that movie match up with what they're, And I don't think it matched up real well from the things I saw about it. But anyway, they interviewed him, and he talked about his time with Bonnie and Clyde and how, what went on and what went down. One of the things they asked about was, I don't know, how many of you saw that movie? Oh, good. You remember the character in there, a little fella? There's a little fella in there, and I can't remember what his name was. But anyway, you always saw him messing with the car. You always saw they had the hood up, and his head was under there, and he was messing around with the engine and messing around with things. And they asked him, they said, did you work on the cars a lot? And W.D. Jones said, no. He said the only person that worked on the car was Clyde Barrow. And he said, our lives depended on whether that car was going to run or not. And he said, the only thing I ever did, I stole cars, and I would drive a car if there was a second one. But as far as ever, tinkering with the engine, there wasn't any way that I would do that. But anyway, W.D. Jones was with the gang for like 8 months, and they were down in the state of Mississippi. And Clyde had told, well, actually, I better go back a little ways. Go back a little bit here. But W.D. Jones said that for the next 6 months, or I should say for the next 6 weeks after the shootout in July, they were like in 6 states. They were hanging out in Iowa a lot. And you're going to find out from the stuff that I'm going to give you today, or tell you about today, they hung out in Iowa a lot. You know why they hung out in Iowa? Iowa friendly, right? We just got the friendliest people here, right? Yeah. Nobody knew who they were. They spent 5 days in Dexter, going uptown Dexter and buying stuff. Not one merchant, including the town constable, John Love, knew. He bought clothes off of John Love. John Love worked in a clothing store. Clyde went in there and bought clothes. Bought the most expensive shirts there was, and John Love looked at him and didn't have a clue who he was. Probably if he would have went to the post office, Clyde's picture was there. But how many people go into the post office thinking that there's going to be an outlaw in your town? Really? Probably not too many people. But anyway, he said that they were around the area for quite a while. In fact, they were worried about Bonnie and Clyde and W.D. Jones coming to the hospital and trying to break Buck out, which I don't think they even thought about that. When I started doing this program, I talked to a couple gentlemen. A couple gentlemen came to me when I worked at Dallas County Conservation. I worked at the museum at Forest Park. And I started doing this program from there. But anyway, I'm just going to read what he told me. Okay. And this was like a week, well, actually a day after the shootout. And I said, this gentleman called me the other day at Forest Park. His name was Marion Hanson. He said he had some information that he and others had known about that I might be interested in. He said on his 13th birthday on July 25th, 1933, he and another fellow by the name of Ralph Franham came across a car in a cornfield at what is now 330th and J in the Boughton. You guys know where Boughton is? East of Perry, between Perry and Woodward. Okay. That would have been the next day after the Dexfield Park shootout. He said he approached the car and he saw a man and woman sitting outside the car. He said when they saw him coming, the man jumped up and told him to get the hell out. He did. Marion was pretty sure that it was Bonnie and Clyde that day. That's about 7 miles from Perry. They were hanging out there. They were hanging out. It very well could have been because that was the direction they were headed and where they had stolen another car. Marion also said one of his neighbors at the time was missing copies of newspapers. They like to do that too, out of his mailbox. Could these two stolen that to see what shape Brother Buck was in? Boughton's just down the road from Perry. Maybe they were thinking about getting Buck out of King's Daughter Hospital. And I told Marion when he was still alive, and he's passed since, about telling me about this story. There was another fella. He didn't write it down, though. I was doing this at a assisted living, and this guy's name was Cliff James. And Cliff James, I was doing the program about Bonnie and Clyde, and he came up and he says, yeah, he said, my dad, we lived over south of Woodward. He said, my dad one day went down, about this time frame, went down to get the cows, milk them. And he said, pretty soon here he come back, and some guy had a gun on him. Took him back up to the house and told him, don't come down and get the cows until we leave. He said it was Clyde Barrow. So they were in and around the area for quite a while. And they, according to W.D. Jones, they were in and out of a lot of states at that particular time. But W.D. Jones, like I was telling you, he spent like 8 months with the Barrows, and they were down in Mississippi. And Clyde told him they needed another car. They always wanted 2 cars. When they were at Dexfield Park, they stole a car from a fellow by the name of Ed Stoner in Perry. Clyde loved Fords. How many of you knew that? He loved Fords. And if he could steal a Ford, he would. He wrote a letter to Henry Ford saying how great his car was. If he ever was going to steal one, I hope it was one of his. 85 miles an hour fast with the V8. That's the reason why he liked it. It gave him an advantage. There wasn't a policeman back in those days that had a car to go over 50. So 85 and 50 or 80 and 50 or 60 and 50, you know who's going to win. Then if you did catch up with him, then you had to deal with his other equalizer. Of course, they left all their guns behind when they left Dexfield Park. They had to. They were going to kill. They did. Didn't have time to pick them up and carry them out. They left 4 Browning automatic rifles. You guys know, some of you have to know about Brownings. Those Brownings they're a military weapon. 20 shot and 20 shot clip in 2.5 seconds with a 30-06 shell. The posse found out real fast that morning when those great big tree branches were bouncing off their heads how powerful those Brownings were. Lucky for them that Clyde was shooting up instead of at them, because all he wanted to do that day was get away. But he had Brownings and they had the Colt 45 automatics. But if you had a car fast enough to catch Clyde, he's probably going to blow the front end of your car off with that Browning, because it would do that very easily because it was a military weapon. But anyway, so, W.D. Jones, they sent him into town to get a car. He did, except he kept right on going. He didn't go back to the camp that they were at. Went home to Texas. And he got a job in Houston, Texas. That's where he was from. And he worked there for a while, and pretty soon one of his coworkers turned him in. They turned him in, snitched on him. So they tried him. They got him for attempted murder, or being with Clyde, an accessory to the murder when Clyde killed one of these police officers that he killed. And I think he got like 15 years for that. Then he got 2 years for harboring Clyde Barrow. So he had 17 years. So this would have been in 1933. He went to prison. He got out in 1943. Okay, he got out in 1943 on parole. Wanted to go into the service. It was during the war years. Okay, wanted to go in the service. Went to get his physical. Okay, chest X-ray. Okay, part of his left lung was gone. You know where he lost it? Dexfield Park. He got shot 3 times with a shotgun in the chest. He had a bullet in his lung as well. I had a bullet there too. Needless to say, he flunked the physical. And I don't know whether he told him where he got all that garbage in his lungs, but it was at Dexfield Park because he got shot 3 times, at least 3 times in the chest. How come it didn't kill him that day? 35 yards away, probably. Light load, like 6 shot and 8 shot. That's basically what they had. If you ever want to come out to the Dexter Museum, I got a gun that one of the posse members carried out there that day. His name was Doyce Pitts. I was tickled to death to get this gun because it was there. You know how hard those kind of things are to get? Something that was actually there, and you have verification that it was there. You know what it was? 410. That doesn't mean anything to you guys. Somebody has to mean somebody has hunted with a 410 before. Some of you are saying, "What? Well, 410, big deal. That sounds pretty big." That's a smallest gauge shotgun, or one of the smallest gauges. Here he had 17-year-old against a Browning automatic. Oh yeah, that's a great matchup. But anyway, we have that gun out there, and a lot of people like to look at it and like to hold it and like to have their picture taken with it because the gun was actually there that day. But anyway, W.D. Jones, married, wife died, got into drugs. Okay. Evidently he was a romancer too, because he liked to sleep with other people's wives. He liked to do that too. Well, I find it quite ironic how W.D. Jones met his Waterloo. Quite ironic. He's at a house with another guy's wife. Husband comes home, catches him in bed, shotgun in the corner. Goodbye, W.D. Jones. I find it quite ironic that he was killed by a shotgun when he had all that shotgun stuff that happened to him at Dexfield Park that day. Okay. Move it up. I talked too much. That's Bonnie and Clyde right there. Move it up, Gail. Again, that picture there was Bonnie's favorite picture of him holding her up. Move it up, Gail. That's Clyde with his sister. I'll just tell you this. Clyde Barrow's family was very important to him, and so was Bonnie Parker's. That's the reason why they kept going back. The only reason they went back to Texas was because of their families. That was the only reason they went back there. That's Clyde's 2 brothers. Or the one on this way is a brother. This is a brother. I think this is a cousin. But that's LC. I'm good friends with LC's son, Buddy Barrow. Buddy Barrow's the nephew of Clyde Barrow. You want to hear some stories? Listen, that guy has the stories about Clyde Barrow. Move it on up. There you got Clyde and Bonnie there with some of their cars. Move it on up. All right, here, the first thing that I have, well, actually the first thing, I don't have a picture of it up. In November of 1933, like I said, they were very close family wives. They went back to Texas to have a birthday party for Clyde's mother. And this was at Sowers, Texas, which is outside of Dallas. But anyway, someone got word of it, and the police showed up. And there was a big shootout that ensued. Bonnie and Clyde both got shot, but they escaped with their lives. Clyde was so upset about that he decided that he was going to kill the sheriff of that county. His name was Smoot Schmidt was the name of the sheriff. And Clyde actually sat outside the office waiting to ambush this guy, and he got talked out of it because of the problems it might cause for him if you're going to shoot a lawman. But he says, I don't care if they shoot at us, but when you start shooting at my family, that's another story. I don't want them doing that. They can shoot all they want at us, and but don't shoot at my family. But anyway, then the next thing I have that happened that I thought was significant. Just let me say this before I go any further. I got most of the information that I'm telling you today that I've researched out of this particular book. And if you want to know about Bonnie and Clyde, if you're really, really interested in Bonnie and Clyde, this is the book to buy, because it takes them from when they met to the time they were killed. It gives them. And date by date by date. There are a whole lot of things I didn't include in this. These are the things I picked out that I thought, would be interesting to talk about. But anyway, in January 16, 1934, in Huntsville, Texas, Eastham Prison. Clyde spent time at Eastham. In fact, in 1932, he was in prison and was sexually assaulted, killed another inmate that was doing that to him, supposedly. Bonnie and Clyde's mother talked the governor into giving him a pardon. Clyde won't do anything bad anymore if you let him out. Oh, he will never break another law. Well, they got out, and that's when Bonnie and Clyde got together for good. And, for on the run for 2 years. But anyway, what Clyde did here was he went out and planted guns. There were like 5 inmates in that prison that he wanted out, 5 of his friends. And on January 16th, 1934, they were out on the duty going out. They chained them up and they go out and do work and so on. And he put these guns where these inmates, and he got the word into them. It wasn't that hard to do, where these guns were at. And they got the guns, and they killed one guard and wounded another one. And they got in the car of Clyde Barrow. And Clyde Barrow had to drive like the devil in order to escape the guards there. But he escaped with 5 of his buddies. And those buddies were Ray Hamilton. You're going to hear more about Ray Hamilton. Henry Methvin, you're going to hear about him. Hilton Bybee, you don't hear much about him. James French, not much about him. And Joe Palmer. Those were the 5 guys that he broke out. Hardened criminals, but buddies of Clyde Barrow. Okay? Next one. Back to Iowa, and again, they liked these small town banks. Do you know why? Rembrandt, Iowa. You guys know where Rembrandt? I'm showing you where Rembrandt is, right there. Clear up in northwest Iowa. They get this one too. We'll talk about that later. Rembrandt they get. Why? Why would they pick on small town Iowa? No police. It's easy, right? It's easy because it was like Dexter. They had a constable during the night, but during the day, who's in charge when the constable's home sleeping? In Dexter, we had a guy they called a day marshal. I remember his name was Art Clausen, and he had a badge, and he'd scare us kids walking around with his badge. We didn't get close to Art Clausen, but anyway. It was an easy mark. It was an easy mark. They could go into the bank 9 o'clock in the morning when it opened up. That's what they did. Knocked it off. First National Bank of Rembrandt, Iowa, they took $3,000. Now you're going to find out they took a lot of money. I often wonder what they did with all the money they took. Well, they dressed well. I know they bought a lot of good clothes, But I think the majority of the money that they stole went back. I think they took it back to Texas or sent it back to their families because it was during the Depression, you know. But anyway, the two people that were probably there were probably Clyde and Henry Methvin. You're going to hear a lot more about Henry Methvin next. That just shows you the way it was back then. That shows you the way it is now. The bank's not even there anymore. But Rembrandt's just a drop in the bucket. It's one of those places that maybe 300 people that are there. I put this one up, Poto, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Poto, Oklahoma, because 3 days later they were back in Oklahoma. Clyde, they'd be in Iowa, then they'd be back in Texas 2 days later. Then they'd be back in Iowa, or they'd be back in another northern state. I just put on there how far it was, and they did that in 3 days. And the roads weren't that great. They liked traveling back roads, but a lot of times I've kind of figured out the main two roads they traveled a lot, particularly to get to Northwest, that was Highway 71 and Highway 169. I know that when they came up from Platte City before the shootout at Dexfield Park, they came up 169 through Mount Air and up through that direction through Adel and so on. But anyway, they robbed a bank in Poto. They got $10,000 from this bank, $6,000 in cash and like $4,000 in Liberty bonds. Somebody was asking me yesterday about where would they cash the Liberty bonds? Good question. I don't know. Where do they do that? That's a good question. I never even thought about that. Whether they had somebody else do it for them. But anyway, they travel great lengths in a short length of time. Okay, next one. That's sort of the way that's what it looks like now. I think that's the bank building. These three characters right here, Clyde Barrow on the left, Henry Methvin in the middle, can everybody see it all right? Okay. Then Ray Hamilton. Hamilton and Methvin were the two main guys that you hear a lot of that ran with Clyde. And I don't know whether it's because he trusted them the most or that trust is betrayed, though. You're going to find that out here shortly. But those are the three amigos. And you can see, they got nice suits on. They got nice hats on. A lot of the money they stole, they dressed well, and they couldn't go to a restaurant and sit down and eat, but they sure loved taking out takeout meals. Steak, chicken, whatever the most expensive was. When they were in Dexter, they took out steak and chicken, the merchant said. Most expensive things. But takeout was a little different back in those days. Real glass plates, real glass glasses, real silverware. And in Dexter, they washed them up and brought them back. I don't know about some of these other places where they just kept them or not, or whatever. Next one, Gil. They were back in Iowa again at a little place called Canarum, which is close to Rembrandt. There was a fellow by the name of Art Arneson that had noticed the car in town, kind of driving around, kind of scoping things out. And he went to the bank, and he told the bank guy, there's some people that look pretty rough in town. You better be on the lookout for it. Well, an hour later, that was like at 8 o'clock in the morning, an hour later, Clyde, Henry Methvin, Joe Palmer, they robbed the bank in Canarum. Took the money from there. They got about $3,000, according to the thing, about $3,000. And they also robbed a customer by the name of Christopher George of $35. And a lot of times when they rob a bank, if there were people in line, there's one coming up that people were in line at the bank and they robbed everybody going right up the counter, took all their money. But that's Canarum. In Iowa, 11 days later, Reed Spring, Missouri. Now, that's clear down in the southern part of Missouri. Any people been in the southern part of Missouri before? How'd you like that ride down there? It's terrible. The only times I've been, it's that and that. And it's like, you're out in the boonies. Except I can take you some places in Iowa, in Guthrie County where I live, that you think you're out in the boonies too. Monteith or Dalmanutha. You guys ever heard of Dalmanutha? It was. It was. Yeah, she knows because she's on the Underground Railroad thing. But at Reed Spring, Missouri, there was one of the 9 shootouts. And Bonnie and Clyde were down there. They had stolen a car up here in Springfield, and they were driving around, and they got lost down there. And there was a farmer in a field, and they stopped and took the farmer hostage. His name was Joe Gunn. Joe Gunn. That's quite a name for riding with Bonnie and Clyde. But the story he told, he was scared to death. But anyway, they picked him up because they wanted to know how to get out of there, where to get to, what they wanted to get to. And so he showed them how. But in the meantime, the word had gotten out that they had stolen a car in Springfield, and they put up some roadblocks. And this farmer, Joe Gunn, said they had the roadblock, and all of a sudden the bullets started flying. He said he dived down in the back seat. He said, lucky I didn't get killed. But he said there was a big shootout, one of 9 shootouts that Bonnie and Clyde were involved in. They were involved in 9 major shootouts. And they escaped with their lives. And down the road, they let Joe Gunn out. And they did this more than one time. They let him out, thanked him for his time and trouble, and gave him $10 for your trouble. And Joe said, I almost got killed for my trouble. Next one, Gail. This is Ranger. And I put this up here because, when they left Dexfield Park, I'm going back here a little bit, they left all their guns, 4 Brownings, 40 Colt 45 automatics, and 3,000 rounds of ammunition. 3,000 rounds. They didn't have any guns. They went to Platteville, Illinois, and robbed an arsenal there to replenish their supply, stealing the Brownings and Colt 45s. This is Ranger, Texas, and there was an arsenal there, an armory there. That was the old army right in that building. And they stopped there and they stole their automatic weapons there too. I don't know why. They thought they needed more, I guess. I don't know for sure what the reason was, but wanted to show you that because that's, again, an edge Clyde thought that he had to have. Next one, yeah. Easter Sunday, April 1st, 1934. The event that happened here, probably, there were a lot of people, lots of people that thought Bonnie and Clyde were okay. They thought that, here we have 2 Robin Hoods, robbing banks that took all my money. That's okay. I don't care because they took all my money. They can take what's left, But they looked at him as Robin Hood, going to give that money to the poor. Now, that's not going to happen. But there was a lot of people that thought Bonnie and Clyde, they aren't as bad as you people are making them out to be. Okay? But anyway, on this date in April, Easter Sunday, 1934, they were actually parked on a dirt road off the main drag. And there were 3 motorcycle cops that drove by. The last 2 guys saw the car, and so they went off on this dirt road to investigate what was going on. Okay? And they were just parking their motorcycles, and they got gunned down in cold blood. Okay? Here's a story that I read about what happened there. According to Bonnie and Clyde, and Henry Methvin was there. But anyway, they were in the car. Bonnie had her rabbit. She had a rabbit that she carried around, an Easter rabbit. Okay? They were in the car resting, and Henry Methvin saw these 2 guys come up on motorcycles, and he told Clyde, he said, there's 2 cops coming. What do you want to do? And Clyde said, take them. Some people think Clyde meant, let's take them hostage. Henry Methvin took it as open season on these 2 guys. They didn't even get off their motorcycles, and Henry Methvin or Clyde or both gunned them down in cold blood. Then the story got out. The story got out about Bonnie got out of the car then. And Bonnie walked up to one of the officers who was still struggling on the ground with a shotgun, put it on his chest, and blew him away. Don't think that happened. I don't think that happened. I think that was made up to, and I'm not defending Bonnie, but I think they needed something to turn the public against Bonnie. A woman. How could a woman do something? Well, she just did. Because there was a witness in the field over here that saw her do it. That was what they said. There was a farmer that was over here, a witness that saw her do that. Personally, I don't think so. Maybe she did, but I don't think she did. W.D. Jones, I'll go back to W.D. Jones. W.D. Jones said he never saw Bonnie ever shoot a gun the time he was with her. Was he defending her? Maybe. I don't know. I know she shot a gun in Joplin. There was a big shootout there. And W.D. Jones was with her. Maybe he was too under fire. I don't know. But he said that Blanche and Bonnie never shot a gun the whole time that he was with them. And that was 8 months. I don't know whether he did or not. But anyway, Grapevine, things turned the other way. Next one. Yeah. Those are the 2 police officers that got killed that day. Ed Wheeler's the top one, and H.D. Murphy. And they had just started this job. They were like on their first week job. Next one. April 6th, 5 days later in Commerce, Oklahoma. I got to ask this audience this. What else is Commerce known for? Any baseball fans in this room? No baseball fans. No baseball fans. No baseball fans, and probably the greatest Yankee slugger, not Babe Ruth, in my day, in the 50s and the 60s. There you go, Mickey Mantle. Mickey Mantle's from Commerce, Oklahoma. There you go. Good job, sir. But it has nothing to do with Bonnie and Clyde. I know. So I'm sorry. Sorry. Just trying to lighten things. What? What'd you say? Possibly because he worked in a, I forget what the industry was there. It was some kind of mining of something that was really, really harmful to the lungs and stuff. And I don't think Mick had to do much mining because he was so good in baseball. But anyway, in Commerce, Oklahoma, they were parked. Roll it up again. You can see where Commerce is in the northeast corner. Okay, at this corner, Bonnie and Clyde had parked, and the town constable, Calvin Campbell, and the deputy, his last name was Boyd, Percy Boyd, I believe. And they were there, and the constable was walking up to the car, and somebody stuck a shotgun out and blew him away before he even got to the car. And then this guy exchanged gunfire, and he got wounded. And Bonnie and Clyde picked him up, put him in the car, and away we go. Held him hostage. Although they treated him pretty well. They treated his wounds. They shot him, and then they treated his wounds. Bought him new clothes, and then drove around and asking him questions about, you know who we are? You ever read anything about Bonnie and Clyde? They wanted to know about themselves. And I don't know what he's told them, but they went all the way up into the northwest. They had him for like 12 hours. And they went all the way up to the northwest corner of Oklahoma, or northeast corner of Oklahoma, a place called Fort Scott. And they dumped him off. Gave him $10. Gave him $10 and said, okay, here's your bus fare back. And before he got out, he says, is there anything that you want me to tell your public? And Bonnie says, yeah. And I don't have the picture up there to show you, but one of the most famous pictures of Bonnie was her standing with her foot on a car bumper, smoking a cigar. And she told this guy, she says, you tell the public I don't smoke cigars. And that was the only thing she said to tell the public. But anyway, next one. And you can see where all this commerce was here. Fort Scott was all the way. They took him all the way up there into that part. I should say it's Fort Scott, Kansas. It wasn't Oklahoma. It's Fort Scott, Kansas. But anyway, next one. I put this on here because Ray Hamilton was still running with the gang. And this was a bank that he robbed after he left the gang. And I'll tell you more about that here in a second. But he robbed the bank, and he got caught here, and he got sent back to prison. And Ray Hamilton, give me the next one. That's what's there today. Next one, oh, that right there, yeah. Okay. Everybody see that? All right. That was Ray Hamilton's girlfriend, married girlfriend. Her name was Mary O'Dare. And Bonnie and Clyde just hated her, just despised her, because she was always conniving, making passes at Clyde, one thing, always wanting more money, wanting to drug Clyde so they could steal his money. And she was just overbearing. And finally, they asked Ray Hamilton and her, just get the H out of here. We're done with you. We don't want anything more to do with it. And they did. And then they stole a car. And then they went to that bank that I just showed you, tried to rob it, and they got caught, which tells you Ray Hamilton wasn't too smart. Clyde was kind of the brains of the operation, but that Mary O'Dare was, she was no good. She was still married and stuff, but it didn't make any difference. Those two are the Hamilton brothers. That's Ray Hamilton, the one that always run with Clyde. Floyd Hamilton was with Clyde some, but not much. Ray Hamilton had an appointment with old Sparky. Some of you are shaking your head. Yeah, the other ones are saying, what the hell's old Sparky? Old Sparky was the electric chair, because he got charged with the murder of one of these when they was with the Barrow gang, and he met his Waterloo through electrocution. But those are the two brothers in jail. They met each other after Ray got caught. Floyd was already there. Next one, Gail. There we go. Roll it up a little bit more. There you go. Good. April 16th, 1934, back in Iowa. This one I know quite a bit about. In Stewart, I have taken lots and lots of people over to this site, and it's changed a little bit. They have a sign, a better sign than that, and then they have a plaque on the side of it that you can, if there's no one there to talk to you, and there won't be unless you call me, go over there and take you over there. It's interesting because I started doing that, and the Stewart, like the people that were in charge of the commerce and Chamber of Commerce and all that, saw me over there and saying, what are you doing? And doing this and this and this about Bonnie and Clyde. And they kind of got into this Bonnie and Clyde thing. And they're actually trying to purchase a car now. I don't know what they're going to get. It's going to be in the 30s type of car. They're going to put it over here on the side of it, and where people can pose. They're going to have like things of Bonnie and Clyde where you can stand next. Yeah, where you can stand on it and look at it. And it's a cool idea. It's a great idea. I wish I would have thought of it, but it's a great idea. But anyway, Bonnie and Clyde were back in Stewart, Iowa, in April 16th, 1934. It's interesting because they stopped for gasoline down on Highway 6, which was the main drag across Iowa, at the Miller's Standard Station. And the guy that was running the station, Mr. Miller, was kind of, these guys wouldn't roll their windows down. They put the money through, didn't want to be seen and this and that and so on. And it was kind of, it's kind of interesting that he was kind of like, I wonder who these guys are. And he looked at the license plate of the car. And that car that they had was a brand new car, a 1934 Pontiac. On the plaque, it says it's an Oldsmobile. And I would argue with anybody in Stewart that put that plaque up that it wasn't an Oldsmobile, it was a Pontiac. Because I got a picture of Clyde with the Pontiac in my book at that same time. But anyway, had a license plates on it. And, back in the day when I was growing up, and probably some of you here too, the county number, every county had a number. Adair County was 1, Polk County was 77, Dallas County was 25, Guthrie County's 39. But anyway, so he was eyeballing this and seeing these people that were in there. And on the license plate, it was, get this, it was Iowa plate, which Clyde had a whole stack of plates about this high. I got a picture, if you want to come up and look afterwards in my book, that in the death car, a whole stack of them. Depending on let's see, we're going to be in Iowa. Okay, let's take those plates off. Let's put the Iowa plate on. But anyway, this Iowa plate was number 13, was the county number. That's Calhoun County. And then the next 4 numbers, get this, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. It was 1, 2, 3, 4. How easy is that to remember? Okay? But this guy saw it, and then a lot of people in Stewart saw driving up and down the streets, kind of driving around, so on. I think probably Clyde was there a year previous, or like in 1933 when they were at Dexfield Park. I think he was there, and I think he cased that bank out then. I'm surprised he didn't case out the Dexter bank, but maybe he did, and maybe they were going to come back later for the Dexter one. They had a chance. But anyway, so they decided that they were going to take this bank, and they parked their car. Roll it up a little bit, Gail. Okay, whoa. Well, you see where this white van is? That's where Bonnie and Clyde and Henry Methvin was with them, parked the car. Henry Methvin and Clyde got out of the car, left Bonnie there, walked up, then walked down the street east, walked all the way down, walked back. Okay? There were a lot of people that saw that 1, 2, 3, 4 car, walked back, went into this store right here. It was a drugstore, or I guess a restaurant or a drugstore. And they went in there and they bought 2 Cokes. And the guy said that they smelled of alcohol, which they could have very well been, but they drove 2 Cokes. They walked across the street to the bank right here. This was right after it opened. And away they went. Their MO when they robbed a bank was this, and I've read this in several different accounts. They'd go in, Clyde usually would go to the counter, $20 bill. Tell the teller I want change for 20. Pull this little thing out, get the change out, put it up, gun pointed at your head. We're going to take all your money, sir, right now. And that's the way it went down in Stewart. It went down in Stewart that day. Henry Methvin and Clyde were in the bank. There were 3 people in there. That's what the bank looks like today. That's the vault. The vault is still there. And you can, they let people in. I've taken people over, and there's a hairstyling place now there. And when I go over there, sometimes it's open, sometimes it's not. When it is open, I just go in and say, can we go look at the vault? And they say, go ahead. Go ahead. I got to tell you this. There's one guy that I took over there, and he was from England. He planned his vacation about coming to Dexter, Iowa, from England, crossed it on a boat. He's a stand-up comic. That's what he did for a living, was a stand-up comic. Came to Dexter. I took him over there. The shop was open, and he said, how cool would it be for me to get my hair cut? And I tell all my buddies I got my hair cut where Clyde Barrow robbed the bank. And so the lady cut his hair, and he was just thrilled that they got his hair cut. And that's the way a lot of these people are when they see this stuff. It's like, God, we're thrilled to see this. And I mean, I don't quite understand it, but anyway, roll it up. Yeah. This fellow right here was the clerk. His name was Harold Cronkite, and Harold Cronkite and Lucille Liddon and the vice president was in there, and they put them all in the vault, and they told them not to come out. They didn't shut the door and lock it. There was actually 2 vaults. Clyde took all the money, had a red and white bag, Sprite bag, they said that day. Clyde took all the silver, took the cash, put them in, wanted to get into the other vault, and Harold Cronkite said it's time lock, can't open it. Clyde took his word at it, and they left. This guy, he was the funeral director of Stewart at that time. His name was Glenn Buffkin, and Glenn actually opened the door for Clyde and Henry Methvin to run out down the street. So people kidded him about that. Hey, you let him get away. You opened the door up for him in this case. But anyway, Bonnie came up in the car, and they jumped in, and Clyde got to the wheel. They took off south out of Stewart onto Highway 6. Now, there's a fellow by the name of Sam Carlin, and it's interesting because, roll it back. This building right here, Sam Carlin had a photography shop, and that's where he worked. And Bonnie was actually parked right there. And Sam Carlin was the head of the vigilante group, the guy that ran down outlaws in Stewart. And he walked right by Bonnie. And he never lived it down, according to the article. He never lived it down because, Bonnie was sitting right in the car, and you walk right by her. And there's that outlaw because he didn't, they didn't know who they were. But anyway, but Sam Carlin and his buddies took off after him, sped through Dexter. They went south out of Dexter. You guys know where Pitzer's at? Some of you are shaking your head no. Some are saying, "What? You're making this up, Rod, right? You're making up the town of Pitzer." It's on we call it the Pitzer Road, but it was like a little ghost. It's a ghost town. There used to be a grocery store and stuff there. And they hit it that way, and they had a flat tire. They pulled off the side of the road. And this family came in and talked to me one day, the Edemboden family, Imboden, Edemboden. His name was, and the grandfather's name, his name was Edemboden, and it stopped by their house. He said he saw this car come up and pull off the road, and they had a flat tire. And he said, I was going to go down and help them. And he said, then I saw a guy with a rifle, or not a guy, but a woman with a rifle on top of the car. He said, I don't think I'm going to go down there and help them. And of course, it was Bonnie on the lookout. But, they got away that day with like $1,500 from Stewart. But the 1234 license plate was, people recognized it. Roll it down again. You roll it back down. Yeah, okay. I put this on here because this is the house of the person they stole their last car from. This was in April 29th, 1934, they stole their last car. And of course it was a Ford, a 1934 Ford, a real fancy Ford that they stole from the Jesse Warren family in Topeka, Kansas. That was it. That was what it looked like. And it was the V8 Ford, and it was pretty fancy. It's interesting because they had just bought that car, and it had like 1,200 miles. This was the death car, too. This was the car they were killed in. And the speedometer, when they stole it 1,200 miles, the speedometer, when they got killed in May 24th, 7,800 miles. A lot of miles. And Clyde was always on the road, and Clyde he knew one speed. Fast. Because it was harder to get shot. You roll it out. May 3rd, back in Iowa. Robbed the bank in Everly, Iowa. Everly's up, roll it up. That's what it looked like back in the day up there. That's what it looked like now. Those were the three people. Go ahead. There, it kind of gives you an idea from Topeka, Kansas to Everly, Iowa. And again, probably when they were up in northwest Iowa, probably cased this place out as well. Okay. Keep going. There you go. All right. May 23rd, 1934, ambush at Gibbsland. And Bonnie and Clyde were killed that day. There's three of the people that were in the posse. What actually happened, they were staying at Henry Methvin's dad's house. His name was Ivy Methvin. And Ivy Methvin actually called the Texas authorities and said, if you pardon my son. Henry Methvin was probably responsible for, I'm thinking, probably 4 or 5 murders. Not all in Texas, though. There were some in Oklahoma, too. But anyway, you pardon my son for what he did, I'll deliver Bonnie and Clyde because they're staying on my property. And they were. There was a house. At first, I thought it was this house. That's not the one, but it would look something like that. But that's not the actual cabin that they lived in. Here, the guy that wrote the book, he was looking for what remained of the house where Bonnie and Clyde stayed when they were on the Methvin property. But anyway, they hired basically, roll it up just a little bit, This guy, Frank Hamer, I don't know if you ever heard of Frank Hamer before. A mean dude. Let's just put it that way. He was a killer himself. From the things I've read about Frank Hamer, he never killed anybody that wasn't, guilty. But it seemed like he liked to do it. He liked to kill people. But anyway, for some reason, some of the movies here recently show Frank Hamer and Clyde Barrow in knowing each other. And I don't know about that for sure, where they actually knew each other. This Bob Elkhorn was a Dallas County. He was a Dallas County deputy under Smoot Schmidt. And a couple of these were locals, rolled up just a hair. This Ted Hinton is a well-known guy. He's actually written. He wrote a lot about the ambush and the killing of them. But anyway, these three gentlemen were kind of put in charge with Frank Hamer, and they went down to where Ivy Methvin's home was, outside of Gibbs, like 8 miles southwest of Gibbsland. And there was only one road in to it. There's only one road into it. And they got in the brush and the trees, and basically after they knew what car Clyde was in with that the tan V8 Ford, that they were going to wait and see if he was there or not. They had reports they had seen him in town, and they were driving back and forth. And so they went out there and they sat the first night, nothing. Second night, nothing. They were packing their stuff up, and they decided to stay a half hour more. And this was like at 9:30 in the morning. They were getting ready. And the mosquito, they said, I just read it before I came in here, the mosquitoes all over the place, just getting bit terribly. But anyway, they hear a car coming. And Alcorn was on the end from where the car was coming, where on the road. And Alcorn was actually on that posse because he could identify Clyde Barrow. That was one of the main reasons, to make sure it was Clyde they were going to be shooting at. Okay? And here comes Clyde, 100 miles an hour, how fast that car would go. They had actually, in order to get Clyde to slow down, Ivy Methvin's truck, and you see this in the movie. The one part of the movie that is accurate is they did have a truck that they parked on the side of the road, jacked it up, took the wheel off, and made it look, and it was Ivy Methvin's, and Clyde would know that, because knowing Ivy, so that Clyde would slow down, because it was going to be hard to shoot him going 80 miles an hour. Okay? And get this, Ivy Methvin went along with it, and then he comes down like 45 minutes before Clyde shows up and tells this posse, I don't want to do this now. I want my truck back. And these guys saying, hey, no way. But Ivy was saying, if you don't kill Clyde, guess what? He's going to kill me. So they actually took Ivy, according to Ted Hinton, in his account, they took Ivy Methvin, and they took him like a half a mile away from where they were at. Somebody took him up there real quickly, handcuffed him to a tree. So he couldn't come down and warn Clyde that an ambush. But anyway, so there they were, and here they hear Clyde coming. And Bob Alcorn says, it's Clyde, that tan Ford. And Clyde starts to slow down because of the truck. And Bob Alcorn comes out, steps up, and hollers at him to stop, halt. And he said, and the other one said, that basically they saw Clyde reaching. And he was reaching for a Browning that was in between him and Bonnie. But anyway, that was enough. They had Browning automatic rifles. 120 shots, basically, into that car. With that, then Bob Alcorn had an automatic shotgun, 5 shots. Then he had pistols, emptied the pistol in, and all of them had that same, all of them. I think like 176 shots. Clyde was killed instantly. Got shot in the head, right behind his left ear. Bonnie didn't go down as easily, though. Bonnie went down screaming, according to Frank Hamer, Hinton. But when the car was still moving, Alcorn said he jumped out and he was shooting the car as it was still going down the road. He said, are they going to get away again? And pretty soon the car started to slow down and swerve and went off into the ditch. He wasn't going anywhere. But they thought, God, didn't we hit him? Is that lucky? But anyway, so they pretty much wiped him out. Roll it up now. There's Clyde. Like I said, he got killed instantly with a headshot. Roll it up a little bit more. There's Bonnie. Ted Hinton actually went down and picked up Bonnie out of her seat. There's another story out there that Frank Hamer went down there. I don't think he did this. It's a good story, though. Went down there, and Bonnie was still gasping and pulled his pistol out and finished her off. That makes a good story. And nobody would have said anything about it. Ted Hinton commented about Bonnie was hit so many times it just She was 4'9", 95 pounds. You know what a 30-06 shell tears you to bits. That's what he said. It just tore. I mean, he said he felt sorry for him. He felt sorry for Clyde too. But anyway, roll it up. But they were killed on that morning. Are we out there? Okay. That's them checking out, taking the stuff out. In my book, it talks about all the stuff that was in that car. Clyde's saxophone. Played the saxophone. Add that in there. Stack of plates. I don't have a picture of the plates. You can come up and look in the book, roll it up. They took him to Arcadia, Louisiana, to the mortician there, and they had trouble embalming the bodies because there were so many bullet holes. The coroner said at least 25 shots in each body. That's the death certificate. 10,000 people showed up at Arcadia. That they found out. The souvenir hunters galore at the shootout site. Shootout at Dexter at the Dexfield Park. There are 400 people that went out to Dexfield Park, picked up stuff. That's the reason why I can't find anything. That's the reason why I can't find any 30-06 shell casings, because somebody from Dexter has them. They took them back to Dallas, Texas. Separate funerals. They thought they'd bury them together. There's still a big controversy. I don't have time to tell you about that. There's still a big controversy about that. They're still trying to get Bonnie and Clyde buried in the same cemetery, in the same 50,000 people showed up. Heroes, villains, folk heroes, criminals. But anyway, that's at one of the funerals, or one of the visitations, I should say. That's the death certificate for Clyde, I believe. That kind of tells you, I don't know, I hope that kind of tells you a little bit about what happened after they left Dexfield Park and some of the things that went on with them. And it's an interesting story to me, but it was the end of an era when they got killed, that's for sure. You guys have any questions you want to ask me about? Yes, ma'am.
For people online, can you tell us what the name of your book is,
Okay.
please?
It says it's on the trail of Bonnie and Clyde, then and now. We have them in the Dexter Museum. They're hard to get. We have a heck of a time getting them. And they've gone, and it's an expensive book. We charge $125 in the museum. And that's our cost. We don't make 1 cent on them. Not 1 cent. And I've sold 3 or 4 this summer. There are people out there that take my word for it, and it's a good book. There's a whole lot of books out there, though, about Bonnie and Clyde. But some of them I don't know. I don't believe, or from the stuff that I've read. Yep.
Those t-shirt were. A t-shirt? Oh. This
T-shirt actually came from Texas, from the prison. Yep. One of my friends, board friends, Doris Feller, her and her husband went down and visited, and they thought of me when they saw Bonnie and Clyde, and so they bought me a shirt. We do have shirts at the Dexter Museum for $20, and they're a damn good shirt. Yes, it has about the Dexfield Park. It's got four pictures from the shootout. I mean, they took that day. The other thing that we just got last year, we got a camera that there was a fellow by the name of Oscar Wiseman was his name, and he was a Polk County deputy. And his granddaughter had this camera, and she called me up, she called me up too, and wanted to know if I wanted this camera because they had this. She said my uncle or my grandpa was in the posse out there, and this is a camera that he took pictures with. And the very famous picture is the picture that shows Blanche standing in the background, and Buck, they have him laid down in front of the car, and there's a whole bunch of people there. And she said that he said he took that picture. And I said, really? And he didn't get credit for it, though. The guy from the Des Moines Register by the name of Herb Schwartz got credit for it, and he won a Pulitzer Prize. But he went to his grave telling his family, because he had a picture, he had the picture in the case saying, I took that picture that day. I took that picture. And I don't know whether the Register took it from him. This was a glass negative picture. Unfortunately, there were no other pictures that he took that day. So I don't know what happened to that. So, yes, sir.
I think I've even seen a documentary on it or something, maybe on Iowa Public Broadcasting. But what happened to the guns? Because the guns became kind of a thing like, okay, that's like a treasure in itself for a collector or whoever, and that many, all of a sudden, poof, they're all gone.
Let me tell you what I think. When I worked for... I'll tell you this. Okay. I asked that when I was working at Forest Park in Perry. I wanted to know what happened to him. And there was a fellow I ran into. I was doing a program, not about Bonnie and Clyde, but he was friends with the Dallas County Sheriff back in the 40s and the 50s. The Dallas County Sheriff was a guy by the name of Evan Berger. And Evan Berger was in the posse that day. He was actually on the bridge, guarding the bridge over the South Raccoon River in case they got a car and they tried to go across it. But anyway, he said, I used to go play cards with Evan Berger, the sheriff, in the Dallas County Jail. Okay? And he said, one day we're playing cards, and Evan said, do you want to see the guns we took that day from Bonnie and Clyde? And this guy, his first name was Dick, and I can't remember his last name, says, well, yeah, let's look at it. And he brought out a whole big thing of guns. Okay? So, fast forward. So, I called Dallas County Sheriff. You have the guns? What are you talking about? I call the Des Moines Police Department. Got the guns at Bonnie and Clyde that you guys picked up that day? Bonnie and Clyde? Who are they? No, I'm serious. And I don't know if they're on a shelf somewhere, or like you were talking about, here you go. That gun was taken from, the Browning automatic rifles that were in the car out there went back to the arsenal. Now, how much time? Do you guys want to hear this, or are you done with me? If you want done, but anyway, we are short. Okay. I just want to tell Clyde, when they escaped from the law, how much are we short in time? Oh, I'm way over then. Okay. But anyway, at that shootout that day, there was a fellow by the name of Cole Spillers, and his house was on the other side of the river, and Clyde Barrow came up alongside the river, and Cole Spillers saw him come up alongside the river. He went up to the bridge, and he exchanged gunfire with these two guys on the bridge, Evan Berger and Everett Place. Came back, but he saw this guy toss a rifle into the weeds. Cole Spillers went down, and it was a Browning automatic rifle. So you got a 19-year-old kid, got a Browning automatic rifle. Cole Spillers is walking back, goes to the road, walking back to his house. Cole Spillers is a bullshitter, likes to stop and talk to people. He was that way when I knew him in Dexter. And he stops and talks to somebody and says, look at this gun. And that guy says, that's a fantastic rifle, son, but guess what? You don't get to keep it. If Cole Spillers would have kept his mouth shut and walked back to his house with that Browning, illegal as hell to have it, but you know how much that gun would be worth? $500,000. I used to take, I knew a guy at the DCI. I started doing this program. I knew that he had a Browning that they confiscated. They got donated from Fort Dodge. Called him up, says, hey, I'm doing a program about Clyde Barrow and he liked Brownings. Can I borrow that right? Can I borrow it? He said, heck yes. So the DCI, I go down there and I borrow this Browning and carrying this Browning around with me to these programs, not thinking, God, Rod, if you get stopped by the highway patrol, you know how much trouble you're in? You know how much trouble you're in? He had a Thompson too. I carried this Thompson. Clyde Barrow never touched a Thompson. Browning, yeah. Thompson, no. But anyway, I was asking him how much that Browning is worth, and it had get this, the serial number was scraped off it. The Barrows were in Fort Dodge in 1933, right around this time before the Dexfield Park thing. Would they have lost a Browning up there? I called the Fort Dodge police chief. I said, you remember that Browning you gave to the DCI? Yeah. What's the history? I don't know. It was here when I got here. So that's all he knew about it. But the serial number had been scraped off of it. But that gun's worth $100,000. The Thompson was worth $75,000. So I was carrying around like $200,000 worth of guns. But to answer your question, I think they got distributed amongst. Yes, sir.
This is more. I've seen your other presentation on this. Obviously, people come to wherever it is, they go toward the sites while it's happening. What do you think the meaning of the Bonnie and Clyde story is for this country? Why do you think it fascinates people the way it does?
Number one, they're outlaws. And it was during an era when there was outlaws. John Dillinger, Machine Gun Kelly, Babyface Nelson. People idolized them as well. Second thing, they were male and female. You didn't see very many male and female. Third thing, they were young. Clyde was 23 and Bonnie was 22. I think that's the reason why people, the male and the female thing, I think is the big thing. But I belong to like 5 or 6 different Bonnie and Clyde groups that have thousands of people. And there are people that know a hell of a lot more about it than me. I think I know some things, but there's some stuff I don't know. The Dexfield Park thing is the thing I know the most about. But that would be my answer. I don't know. Yeah.
Ratted that out. Did his son get pardoned?
Yes. He got pardoned for what he did in Texas. But he committed a murder or two in Oklahoma. So he went to jail. But he got out in the 40s sometime. But get this, you know what happened to him? They found him dead along the railroad tracks, ran over by a train, cut in half. That's what happened to Henry. And the Methvin family blamed the Barrows. Henry Methvin? Henry Methvin was probably at his house. That's where I'm guessing. But I just read an article about Ray Hamilton, that one guy was talking about, Ray Hamilton. He was going to rat them out too. He had been getting information from wherever and while he was in prison, and they were actually going to take him to Louisiana to show him where Clyde Barrow was at. Clyde Barrow and Ray Hamilton had a big falling out. They became bitter. Clyde said, if I ever get into prison again, I'm going to kill you. But Clyde was never going to go to prison. They already made that pact. Bonnie and him both said, we're going down together. Bonnie wrote a poem on May 5th about we're going down together. We're not going back. We're not going back. We're not going to prison. We'll get killed before we go to prison. Clyde said, I'll never go back. Now I'm way over. You guys are a great audience. I appreciate your attention.
So, before you go, somebody asked online, they want to see your first program, which we were not able to videotape. So how does somebody find out where you are and what topic you're talking about?
That's you can actually go to the museum website. My name, my email, and my phone number. I like to have people come to the museum and I can tell them the story there. And we got all the artifacts and all kinds of stuff to look at. As far as kind of then I can take people out to the site. Whatever the date of October, the second Saturday in October. And I know Iowa football and Iowa State football runs into things, but the second Saturday in October, I open the museum at 10 o'clock in the morning to 1. And then if anybody wants to go out to the actual site, to where the shootout was. I take them out there, and we have 2 historical markers at the bottom of the hill. And then I usually take them over to Stewart. So, but if you don't want to do that, you can call me up. My name and my number is out there. And if I'm free, I'll take you. If I'm doing something, we'll have to schedule another time. But yeah, it's pretty cool. We're open on Sundays from 1 to 3. If you want to come when I'm there, it's the first Sunday in October. That's our last month. But like I said, if you want to come out some other time, just call me or email me or get a hold of Gail and she can get a hold of me. But anyway, thanks. Thank you again. I really appreciate it. So.
Speaking of museums being open, look at that segue. Jordan House Museum is open on Fridays and Sundays for tours, 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. We highly recommend you pre-purchase tickets so we know you're coming, so maybe we can make cookies or something. If you come see us, we have a brand new outdoor fundraiser that we're really proud of, Pathway to History, where people are purchasing engraved pavers to remember loved ones who have passed or important events. It was just installed last Friday. So please come to the Jordan House at 2001 Fuller Road and see it. There's kind of an example back there and the order forms. You can order it online or on paper. I'm not sure what the technical term for that would be. There's also the rest of the Iowa Files schedule is back there on that table too. So we have October 17th is our next program, Vanished Villages, Iowa Ghost Towns. Again, we will be live streaming it both through YouTube and on our Facebook page. And we also have a sign-up sheet back there. Get on our email newsletter. I don't sell it to anybody, I promise. I could make good money, but I don't. And we send out monthly e-newsletters to let you know what we're doing and what's going on, because we like to brag about all the awesomeness that is the West Des Moines Historical Society. So thank you so much and have a good rest of your day.